Hello students, welcome to Byju's IAS. Welcome to a session on economy this week, wherein we'll be taking up some of the very important articles that have appeared in various business related newspapers and we'll be analyzing these particular articles. For this particular video, I've chosen the time period from 7th to 13th of September 2020 and the articles that I've chosen are from Business Line, Hindu, Business Standard, Indian Express and Livemint. Let's begin the discussion. The first article is related to draft electricity rules. These are basic rules or the draft which has been proposed by the government to protect the rights of the consumers. Now, before I discuss what points have been given with respect to the article, what are the important points that you need to understand in the first place? Please understand this. In case of the power sector, basically there are three entities. The one which generates electricity, generation company, GENCO. Second, which transmits electricity from generator to the one which will distribute the electricity, which is called as a transmission company. And finally, it is the distribution company or DISCOM which will purchase electricity and supply it to the consumers and then collect the bills and pay the money to the GENCO. Now, in the recent times, there has been a lot of discussion with respect to DISCOMs. And this particular draft rule basically discusses some of the duties or obligations of the DISCOMs. Now, apart from this, another very important point that you need to remember is with respect to the Government of India's proposal under Atmanirbhar Bharat. Under Atmanirbhar Bharat, Government of India has already stated that these particular DISCOMs which are under the union territories will be privatized. This is one very important point. In addition to this, you also need to remember that in case of various cities in India, we have the private sector companies which are involved in the DISCOMs. Majority of the DISCOMs is owned by whom? It is owned by the state governments. That is, the DISCOM companies are owned by the state governments. But in certain cities, for example, in Agra, Delhi, Mumbai, etc., you will see that there is a participation of the private sector companies, right, which are basically functioning as distribution companies or DISCOMs. Now, coming back to this particular article, what points have been given? In what way Government of India is trying to protect the rights of the consumers? First and foremost, it is the duty of the DISCOMs to ensure that there is a quality of service, quality electricity which is supplied to the consumers. Is it okay? Right? I'll repeat the point here. It is the duty of the DISCOMs to ensure that the quality electricity will be provided to the consumers. Second, whenever an application is provided, now as per the latest guidelines, within certain period of time, the connection has to be provided by the DISCOM. In case of metro cities, this has been fixed at 7 days. In case of municipal areas, it is 15 days. And in case of rural areas, it is 30 days. Next point, whenever an electricity meter is fitted, if it is within the premises of the house, then the duty of protecting or the security of this particular, the meter will be on the household. And if this particular meter is fitted outside the facility or outside the premises, then the obligation will fall on the DISCOM. Next, the process or the documentation which was required to get electricity connection has been revised. Now, you need only 2 documents to provide to the DISCOM to get the electricity connection. And if your requirement is up to 10 kilowatt, this will be applicable now. Next point, these particular DISCOMs will be pushing the payment through online methods. Especially if the payment is above 1,000 rupees, then these particular DISCOMs will require the consumers to make the payment through online methods. Next, if there is a burnt or a defective meter, then within 24 hours, this particular meter shall be replaced in case of urban areas and within 72 hours in case of rural areas. So these are some of the very important points or the guidelines which have been issued very recently by the government in order to provide certain power to the consumers under this particular concept of draft electricity rights to consumers rules 2020. Now, based on this particular discussion, I've given a question here. Consider the following statements about draft electricity rules. This is upgradation of the consumer protection rules provided under Electricity Act of 2012. Wrong. Please make a note of this. For the first time, such rules have been made by the government in order to protect the consumers or the rights of the consumers. Second, the DISCOMs are to provide electricity connection in all the places within 7 days of the application date. Again wrong. In case of metro cities, it is 7 days. In case of municipal areas, it is 15 days. In case of rural areas, it is 30 days. So both the statements are wrong. Right option will be option D. Both are false. Next question. The term prosumers often appearing in the newspaper in connection to the power sector refers to. Now, in recent times, especially in this particular draft guidelines itself, Government of India discusses the concept of a prosumers. What do you mean by prosumers? In simple terms, understand this. If there is a household here, it requires electricity, it consumes electricity, and in addition to this, it has installed, let's say, solar energy panels, rooftop solar energy panels, and it is also a consumer of renewable energy, and it will supply this by connecting it to grid. So on one side, the same household is the consumer, and on the other side, it is also a producer of renewable energy. So this particular household will be referred to as prosumer. It is a combination of two terms, producer plus consumer. So basically, under these particular guidelines, the government says that if there is a particular household which wants to generate renewable energy, then it can apply and notify the DISCOM. In addition to this, the draft guidelines also say that the DISCOM will have to provide a particular website in which it will list out all the services which are frequently raised or asked about by the consumers and the process through which these particular services can be obtained by the DISCOM. So this is a basic discussion related to concept of a prosumers. So based on this, the right option will be option C, consumers who are also producers of the renewable energy. The next article is related to Matsya Sampada Yojana. Now earlier Government of India announced Atmanirbhar Bharat, and before this Government of India had announced the concept of a Kisan Sampada Yojana. And in case of Kisan Sampada Yojana, there are various components, but basically the idea of a Kisan Sampada Yojana was a promotion of a food processing, promotion of a infrastructure related to food processing, warehousing infrastructure, cold warehousing infrastructure, etc. So in addition to various reforms such as mega food park, cold warehousing under Kisan Sampada Yojana, the government under Atmanirbhar Bharat announced that it will be promoting exports of a fish under a concept called as a Matsya Sampada Yojana. Now some of the very important points related to Matsya Sampada Yojana are: 1. This particular scheme will be implemented for a period of 5 years up till 2024. Second, it aims to double the exports of a fish in the next 3 to 4 years. Next point, under this particular scheme, Government of India will incur certain expenditure to provide infrastructure. Although various types of infrastructure is given in the article, all you need to remember is the objective is to promote development of infrastructure. Now apart from this, you also need to understand this. This particular scheme will be launched in all the states. Now I want to make a point here. If you read this particular article, the article says that this particular scheme has been launched in 21 states. But as per the PIB website, that is the document which has been published in Press Information Bureau, it states that it will be launched in all the states. Under this particular scheme, I have already mentioned that it is to promote development of infrastructure, construction of infrastructure. In addition to this, it will also promote adopting to modern technology. So these are some of the very important points with respect to Matsya Sampada Yojana. In addition to this, in this particular article, another very important point has been mentioned. That is the launch of eGopala app. Now this particular app will help the farmers, especially those particular farmers who have cattle. In this particular app, all the information related to the cattle breeding or providing nutrition, food, the health care of these particular bovine animals, all of this information will be provided in this particular app named eGopala app. So these are some of the very important points which have been given in this particular article. Now based on this, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements about PM Matsya Sampada Yojana. It has been launched in all the coastal states? No. It has been launched in all the states. Okay. Next, it will be implemented for a period of 5 years between 2020-21 to 24-25. This particular statement is true. So right option will be option B, only 2 is true. Next, I have given another question. The government recently has launched Dash app to provide a comprehensive breed improvement marketplace and information portal for the direct use of the farmers. Basically, they are discussing related to eGopala app. I know some of you will mention that, sir, there is no mention of the cattle in this particular context. And you also need to understand that This question I'm asking in the context of the previous article that I've discussed. So based on that, I'm going to conclude that this is related to the e-Gopal app, which has been launched very recently by the government. Now let's go to the next article, is related to EPFO. Now some of the very important points related to EPFO are: 1. It stands for Employees Provident Fund Organization. The concept of EPF has been introduced in India with the passage of an act, EPF Act of 1952. Okay. In fact, to be more precise, it will be titled as EPF and Other Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1952. Under this, basically all those particular companies which have more than 20 employees will be covered. Now, what about those particular companies which will have less than 20 employees? Can they be coming under this particular concept? Yes, voluntarily they can come under the concept of a EPF. Next, under this particular concept of EPF, these particular companies will make certain contributions. Now, although I'm saying that these particular companies, to be more precise, understand this, the employees of the companies will basically subscribe to this particular facility. Under this particular facility, if an employee is earning up to 15,000 rupees, he is mandatorily supposed to be coming under the concept of a EPF. Under this, what about those particular employees who are earning more than 15,000? Can they be contributing to EPF? Definitely yes. Next, so under this particular scheme, whatever is a contribution of the employee will be matched equally by the employer. That is, if there is any employer who has hired a person and has given the contract or has entered into an agreement with the employee, the terms of these particular contract will have mentioned what will the contribution of the employer, that will be equivalent to the contribution done by the employee. Now, next point, 12% of the salary is contributed. Out of this particular 12%, 8.33% will go towards employees' pension fund, and the remaining 3.67% will go towards employees' provident fund. Now, what is the utility of this? Under this particular EPFO, which will manage these particular funds which are collected by the employees like this, they will invest these particular monies or funds in the market. Now, where will they invest? They invest in the equity market, they invest in the debt market. But one very important point that you need to understand here is, equity market is very volatile, very risky. So what this particular EPF does is basically limit its investment in the equity market, and high investments will be done in the debt market. As of now, the latest guidelines state that the EPF organization will invest up to 15% of its funds in the equity market, and remaining will be done in the debt market. For a simple reason, in debt market, for example, investment in bonds, the risk is very, very less, returns are guaranteed. Whereas in case of equity market, it is very volatile and the investments are very, very risky. And that is exactly what has happened, and that's why this is there in the newspaper. Now, in case of EPFO, the highest decision-making body or the apex body is a Central Board of Trustees. What they basically do is, after the end of the financial year, they will come out and announce or decide and announce how much will be the returns provided to the investors, or in simple terms, those particular employees who have invested, what will be their returns that will be fixed by this particular CBT. Now, very recently what has happened, they have invested in the equity market, they have invested in the debt market, but the equity market is very volatile. Considering this particular point, the CBT has announced 8.5% returns for the year 2019 and 2020. Out of this particular 8.5%, they have said 8.15% is guaranteed returns, and remaining 0.35% will be linked to the exchange traded funds that they will sell in the market, get the returns and make the payment. Or in simple terms, they are saying that we will provide you 8.15%, no doubt regarding that, and the remaining 0.35% that will be dependent on how much money we will be making by selling these particular exchange traded funds. These are nothing but our investments in the equity market. Now, this is there in the discussion with respect to EPFO. Now, another very important point that you need to remember is this. Generally, in case of a small saving schemes, understand this, the rate of returns in case of this, for example, National Pension Scheme, the government will keep on changing these particular interest rates. That is, these particular returns are linked to the market interest rates. Whereas in case of EPF, the returns are announced once annually by the CBT. You'll have to remember this particular point. Now, this is there in the discussion with respect to EPFO and the issues related to this. Now, based on this, I've given a question here. Consider the following statements about EPFO. EPFO invests the corpus only in the equity market? No, both in the debt as well as equity market. But I've already mentioned this. Investments in the equity market is very, very less. That is up to 15% right now. Second point, Central Board of Trustees is the apex decision-making body under EPFO. Definitely yes. This particular statement is correct. So right option will be option B, only 2 is true. The next article is related to policy and foreign investment. In recent times, Government of India on one side has introduced the concept of a self-reliance, and on the other side has been announcing various reforms to attract foreign investments such as foreign direct investment. For example, a couple of weeks ago, Prime Minister gave a speech wherein he has basically pitched the idea of investing in India to these particular US companies. So this particular article discusses the mixed policy messaging that has been given by the government. In various sectors, right now Government of India is asking these particular companies to be involved in the concept of a self-reliance. That is, while sourcing these particular raw materials, they are asking these particular companies to be focused on sourcing the raw materials from the domestic market. Various ministries have been putting this particular restriction of sourcing norms on these particular participants in the market. But on the other side, the Government of India is also asking for the foreign companies to invest in India. Now, what is the issue here? Issue is that imagine a foreign company XYZ comes into India and invests in India. Let it be in any sector. So when this particular company will invest in India, it wants to obviously make a huge amount of a profit, and as per its calculation or as per its business model, its profit margins will be very high when they source a certain raw material from the external market. It could be because the raw material could be cheaper. It could be because the raw material, the quality of it would be available only from that particular external exporter. It could be any reason. But the problem here is when this particular company will come into India, make an investment, it would not have foreseen the idea of a Government of India pushing the idea of a self-reliance on these particular companies. For example, in many of the sectors, Government of India is saying only these particular companies which are sourcing up to this much, I will entertain these particular companies into these particular sectors. So these kind of policies are counterproductive to the policy of the foreign direct investment. The whole argument is, in case of Indian economy, we are seeing a contraction in the growth rate. One way to come out of this particular issue of contraction in the Indian economy is to attract huge amount of investment, especially from the foreign market. So when Government of India keeps on changing these particular policies will be counterproductive to the message of a Government of India for the foreign companies to come and invest in India. This is the gist of the article provided here. The next article is related to KV Kamath panel, which was set up by RBI. Now, some of the very important background. The Reserve Bank of India, in order to protect the companies during this particular lockdown phase, introduced a concept of a loan moratorium. What is the concept there? The repayment will not be enforced on these particular companies. In simple terms, the borrowers can choose not to pay for a certain period of time. Again, please be very, very careful. The basic idea there in moratorium was for the period of 6 months, they will not be making a payment. That doesn't mean that the payment that was due for 6 months will not be collected. After the moratorium is over, of course, the due will be collected. Only thing is that the payments would have been postponed for a period of 6 months. That is the whole idea of a loan moratorium here. Do not get confused with loan cancellation. In case of loan cancellation, loan is not recollected. In case of a loan moratorium, RBI simply gave a relaxation of 6 months during which the companies were not asked to make a payment or they were not enforced to make a payment. They could simply choose not to make a payment for this month, and after 6 months, they would have been repaying these particular loans. Now, the issue here is after 6 months, obviously the loan moratorium period will be over. So the pressure of a repayment on these particular companies will increase. So there is a danger that because there is so much of a disruption in the market, these particular companies will not be able to generate revenues. So obviously they'll be under financial pressure. And since the moratorium is over, banks would be asking the companies to make a repayment. And if they are unable to make a repayment, obviously the accounts will be classified as non-performing asset. So to protect these particular companies, Government of India asked RBI to basically come out with loan restructuring. And this is being discussed even in case of Supreme Court also. So idea of a loan restructuring was this. RBI said, okay, we will provide it. But how do I identify? So on what concept should I provide loan restructuring to these particular borrowers? For this only, the Kamath panel was set up, and this particular KV Kamath panel has recommended 5 very important parameters on which the loan restructuring could be provided to the loan borrowers or borrowers, corporate borrowers in the market. In addition to this, the panel also has stated that these particular accounts to which the loan restructuring will be provided should be standard assets and where the repayment is not due for more than 30 days. Now let me elaborate on all of these particular points. First and foremost, the 5 very important parameters which have been identified by the panel are total outside liabilities divided by adjusted tangible net worth. Second, total debt divided by EBITDA. Third, current ratio. Fourth, debt service coverage ratio, and average debt service coverage ratio. Now what is the meaning of each of the term? Will UPSC ask you to explain all of these particular terms? Absolutely no. These are very technical aspects. All you need to understand the importance of these particular concepts. First and foremost, total outside liabilities divided by adjusted tangible net worth. It basically means what is the dependence of the company on the borrowing. What kind of a borrowing? Debt borrowing. So generally it is presumed that in case of the market, we assume that lower this particular ratio, more better the situation of the company is. Okay, this is related to first one. Second, total debt divided by EBITDA. Now what is this EBITDA? It is earnings before interest, taxation, depreciation, amortization. In simple terms, this particular total debt divided by EBITDA represents to what extent the company has earned or made revenues to repay the debt. Is it okay? How much money is there with the company in the form of revenues to repay the debt? That is the importance of a total debt divided by EBITDA. Third, current ratio and debt service coverage ratio basically discuss how much money is there with these particular companies to repay the debt in short term. Again, I am saying do not worry about the technical aspects of these particular ratios. UPSC will not ask you them, because if you are writing a CA exam, definitely yes, this will be important. But for UPSC, all you need to understand the basic concept there. Now, in addition to this, the panel has stated that the accounts have to be standard. What do you mean by this? Generally, when the bank will give loan to, let's say, a borrower, it expects a repayment. If the borrower is making prompt repayment, then we'll basically say that this particular asset is a standard asset. Is it okay? And if he's not making a repayment, let's say for a period of 90 days, then this particular account will be classified as what? Non-performing asset. So what the panel has said, the account which is seeking the loan restructuring should be standard asset. And the repayment in these particular accounts should not be due for more than 30 days. Or it should be up to 30 days only. Okay, that is a due should be up to 30 days, should not have crossed more than 30 days. So these are some of the very important points given by this particular panel in order to identify certain loans in 26 sectors. In order to identify loans in 26 sectors and try to provide restructuring to these particular loans. Again, understand all of these particular points are very, very important for a simple reason. Loan restructuring cannot be provided to all the borrowers. For a simple reason, then everybody in the system will seek restructuring. Those particular companies which are started defaulting long before this loan moratorium was introduced, they will also seek the restructuring of loans. Some of the people, just for sake of getting the restructuring, will seek for restructuring. So to identify only those particular companies which have been affected by the COVID, I repeat, those which have been affected by the COVID, we want to identify them and provide loan restructuring. That is basically a relief to these particular companies. How do you ensure that? The panel has recommended these particular parameters. Okay, this is a discussion related to KV Kamath panel. Next, very recently Government of India has announced the concept of RODTEP, that is a remission of duties or taxes on export product. Now, in the earlier videos, we have already discussed what is the concept of a RODT. In a nutshell, earlier we had a MEIS, Merchandise Exports from India scheme. WTO has stated that Government of India will have to withdraw this particular scheme. So in order to address this particular issue of withdrawing these particular export incentive schemes, Government of India has announced these particular schemes will be replaced by RODTEP. Now in this particular article, they have mentioned two very important points, and I'll be focused on these two important points. First, Government of India is in the process of identifying the products or the commodities which will be covered under RODTEP. And as per the article, the information given there says all the exports of products will be covered there. But each of the products, how much remission will be provided, how much incentive will be provided, this is taking certain period of time. This is the first very important point. Second very important point, with respect to textile sector. In case of a textile sector, Government of India is already running one scheme, that is a rebate of state and central taxes levies on exports of garments and made up, ROSCTL. In case of textile sector, Government of India has already replaced the MEIS with another scheme, that is ROSCTL. Now, why this has been replaced? One of the very important outcomes or the orders which was issued by WTO with respect to export incentive scheme was government will have to withdraw these particular schemes which are given in the textile sector. Now, this was given prominence in the order, hence Government of India has already replaced these particular schemes in the textile sector, replaced that with ROSCTL. So, these are the two very important points mentioned and discussed in this particular article related to export incentives. So, these are the various articles as well as the questions related to articles for this particular time period. Thank you. Have a good day.